His wife left him and their 3 kids for another man. 15 years later, she knocked on their door. David, I can't do this anymore. I need more than this. Life. Don't try to find me. Those were the 20 words Clara Miller scrolled on a piece of notebook paper before abandoning her husband and 3 children 15 years ago, choosing a rich man's promises over her family's love. She had no idea that the broken man she left behind would transform into someone who could look her in the eye when she returned desperate and homeless and deliver the most devastating lesson about consequences of actions in family history. What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about forgiveness, family, and second chances. Viewers, have you ever been abandoned by someone you trusted completely only to have them return when they needed you? How do you handle it when the person who destroyed your world expects mercy? Drop your thoughts in the comments. But before we get to that life-changing moment when Clara knocked on David's door after 15 years of silence, we need to go back and understand what really happened in that small house on Maple Street, where a family of 5 was about to become a family of 4 in the most devastating way possible. The morning started like any other Thursday in the Miller household. David was already dressed in his navy blue work shirt with Miller's Auto Repair stitched across the pocket, sipping black coffee while reviewing invoices at the kitchen table. The smell of motor oil still clung to his fingernails despite his thorough scrubbing the night before. 7-year-old Ethan was practicing his spelling words, mouthing them silently while his cereal grew soggy. 5-year-old Sophie was having an animated conversation with her stuffed elephant about whether elephants could fly. And 1-year-old Noah was babbling happily in his high chair, throwing Cheerios with the precision of a tiny artillery expert. Clara moved through the morning routine like a ghost. She prepared lunches without speaking, tied Sophie's shoes without smiling, and barely acknowledged David's kiss on her cheek as he headed out the door. "See you tonight, honey." Mrs. Patterson said she'd watch Noah while you take the kids to soccer practice. Clara mumbled, not looking up from the dishes. David paused at the doorway, studying his wife's reflection in the kitchen window. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing the same faded blue robe she'd had since Sophie was born. When had she stopped caring about how she looked? When had the spark in her green eyes dimmed to this hollow stare? "Clara, you okay?" She turned then, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just tired, long night with Noah." Teething. David nodded, though something twisted in his gut. Noah hadn't been teething for weeks. Clara Miller stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, tracing the dark circles under her eyes. 28 years old, and she felt ancient. The house felt like a prison cell. Same cracked linoleum, same leaky faucet David kept promising to fix. Same life shrinking smaller each day. While David built his auto repair business 16 hours at a time, Clara watched other women at the grocery store. Women with manicured nails who didn't smell like baby formula and burnt coffee. Women whose husbands wore suits instead of grease-stained coveralls. The breaking point came at Sophie's parent-teacher conference. Clara sat in the tiny plastic chair, listening to Mrs. Henderson praise Sophie's creativity when she noticed the man across the hallway, tall, silver-haired, wearing an expensive watch that caught the fluorescent light. He was everything David wasn't: polished, successful, confident. Mark Reynolds owned half the commercial real estate in North Dallas. When he smiled at Clara outside the school, her heart hammered against her ribs for the first time in years. "Rough night?" he asked, nodding toward her coffee-stained shirt. "Rough life," Clara replied, before she could stop herself. He laughed, not the tired chuckle she got from David, but genuine amusement. "I'm Mark, and you look like someone who deserves better than rough." 3 weeks later, Clara was meeting him at the Ritz-Carlton downtown while David thought she was at book club. Mark made her feel alive again. He talked about trips to Paris, weekend getaways to Napa Valley, a life where money wasn't counted in quarters for the laundromat. "You're wasting away in that little house," Mark whispered over expensive wine. "A woman like you should be traveling the world, not changing diapers. Clara's hand shook as she sipped the wine that cost more than her family's weekly grocery budget. I have 3 children, Mark, and they'll be fine. Kids are resilient. But you're disappearing, Clara. I can see it in your eyes. The affair consumed her, not knowing that he is a player. Secret phone calls during nap time. Lies that rolled off her tongue like prayers. David noticed her distraction but attributed it to exhaustion. He worked even harder trying to build the financial security he thought she needed. Clara's guilt twisted into resentment. Every time David kissed her forehead or brought her flowers from the gas station, she felt trapped. Mark was offering her escape, a condo in Uptown, freedom, a chance to be someone other than David's wife or the kids' mom. The final straw came on a Tuesday. David surprised her with a weekend getaway to Lake Texoma, their first vacation in 3 years. We can't afford this, Clara said, staring at the cabin reservation. I've been saving. We deserve this, honey. Just the 5 of us. Clara looked at her husband's hopeful face and felt nothing but suffocation. While he saw family bonding, she saw prison bars. That night after David fell asleep holding baby Noah, Clara made her choice. Mark was right. She was disappearing. And maybe that was exactly what she needed to do. Friday afternoon, October 15th, David finished his last oil change early and decided to surprise Clara with takeout from her favorite Chinese restaurant. The autumn wind carried the scent of burning leaves as he pulled into their driveway, plastic bags of sweet and sour chicken swinging from his wrist. The house was too quiet. David found Ethan and Sophie huddled together on the living room couch, Sophie's face dry with tears. Noah sat in his playpen, whimpering and reaching toward the hallway. Daddy! Sophie ran to him, wrapping her small arms around his legs. Mommy left with her bags. David's heart stopped. He walked toward the bedroom like a man heading to his execution. The master bedroom looked like a crime scene. Dresser drawers hung open, emptied. Clara's side of the closet gaped like a missing tooth. Her jewelry box sat open and bare on the nightstand. On the kitchen table, a single sheet of notebook paper waited like a death sentence. David, I can't do this anymore. I need more than this life. Don't try to find me, Clara. 20 words. 15 years of marriage reduced to 20 words. David's legs gave out. He sank into the kitchen chair, staring at Clara's handwriting until the letters blurred together. The takeout bags hit the floor, sweet and sour sauce spreading across the linoleum like blood. Daddy, where's Mommy? Ethan stood in the doorway, his 7-year-old face trying to process what his father's broken expression meant. David looked at his 3 children, Ethan with his serious brown eyes, Sophie still hiccuping from crying, Noah babbling and clapping his hands, oblivious to the destruction around him. These babies didn't understand that their mother had chosen another man over them. They didn't know. She was probably in Mark Reynolds' arms right now, planning her new life without dirty diapers and grocery store flowers. Something crystallized in David's chest. Not rage. That would come later. This was harder, colder purpose. He stood up, wiped his eyes and knelt down to gather his children around him. Mommy had to go away for a while, but you know what? You've got me and I'm not going anywhere ever. Sophie's lip trembled. Is she coming back? David's jaw tightened. I don't know, baby girl. But I promise you this. We're going to be okay. The 4 of us are going to be more than okay. That night, after putting the kids to bed, David sat in his empty bedroom and made a vow that would define the next 15 years of his life. If Clara wanted to abandon her family for a richer man, that was her choice. But these children would never doubt their worth again. He would work harder, love fiercer and be everything she couldn't be. He would be enough. 5 a.m. became David's religion. While Dallas slept, he was already at Miller's auto repair. Coffee in one hand, wrench in the other. The single father grind was merciless. Drop kids at school, work until pickup, homework and dinner, bedtime stories, then back to the shop until midnight. The first year nearly broke him. Sophie had nightmares crying for her mother. Ethan became the man of the house at 8, helping with Noah's bottles and diaper changes. David's hands bled from overtime work, but the bills kept coming. Rent, groceries, daycare, medical expenses. When Noah got pneumonia, other single parents talked about dating, moving on. David had no time for romance. His heart had room for 3 people only. By year 3, Miller's auto repair was earning respect. Word spread about the honest mechanic who wouldn't rip you off, who'd explain exactly what your car needed in plain English. David hired 2 employees then for the small shop on Industrial Boulevard, expanded into the building next door. The kids thrived despite everything. Ethan excelled in math and science, building elaborate Lego structures that looked like architectural blueprints. Sophie discovered she had healing hands, nursing wounded birds, bandaging scraped knees, dreaming of medical school. Noah grew into a quiet, observant boy who could fix anything mechanical just by watching David work. Year 7 brought the biggest test. A drunk driver crashed into David's truck, leaving him with a shattered collarbone and 3 weeks off work. Bills piled up like autumn leaves. The bank threatened to foreclose on both the house and shop. 13-year-old Ethan found his father crying at the kitchen table, surrounded by unpaid invoices. "Dad, what if we lose everything?" David wiped his eyes, pulled his son close. "We won't, because Millers don't quit. We fight." They fought. David worked one-handed, teaching his kids to answer phones and organize parts. The community rallied. Customers paid early. Competitors sent referrals. Miller's auto survived. Year 10 marked the turning point. David opened 2 more locations across Dallas. Miller's Auto Tire became synonymous with quality and integrity. Ethan earned a full scholarship to Texas A&M for architecture. Sophie was accepted into pre-med at UT with honors. 15 years after Clara walked out, the Miller family stood in their new house in North Dallas. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and a workshop where David could tinker on weekends. No more cracked linoleum. No more leaky faucets. Ethan was 22, fresh out of college, designing buildings that would reshape Dallas skylines. Sophie, 20, was crushing organic chemistry while volunteering at Children's Hospital. Noah, 16, could rebuild an engine blindfolded and was being recruited by automotive engineering programs nationwide. David had kept his promise. He had been enough. But Sunday evening, October 15th, exactly 15 years after Clara's abandonment, the doorbell rang and everything David had built was about to be tested in ways he never imagined. David's hand froze on the doorknob. Through the peephole he saw a face that had haunted 15 years of sleepless nights. Clara, but not the polished woman who'd walked out. This Clara looked weathered, desperate. Her once perfect blonde hair hung limp and dull. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Behind her stood a skinny teenage girl, clutching a worn duffel bag. The door opened like a wound reopening. "Hello, David." Clara's voice cracked. "This is Emily. She's my daughter." Time stopped. David's children appeared behind him like ghosts materializing. Ethan, now 22 and built like his father, stepped forward with clenched fists. Sophie, home from medical school, pressed her hand to her mouth. 16-year-old Noah stared at the stranger, who was supposed to be his mother. Clara's story spilled out in desperate fragments. Mark Reynolds went bankrupt, had discarded her for a 50-year-old that can pay his bills 7 years into their relationship. She'd raised Emily alone, in apartments that grew smaller and shabbier with each eviction notice. Waitressing jobs, temp work, food stamps. The glamorous life Mark promised had been a mirage. "I lost everything, David. The condo, my car, my dignity. Emily's been sleeping on friends' couches for weeks." Clara's hand shook. "I know I don't deserve anything, but she's just a kid. She needs stop." Ethan's voice cut through the night air like broken glass. His architectural degree, his success, his carefully built life. None of it mattered now. He was 7 years old again, watching his father crumble at the kitchen table. "You think you can just show up after what you did to him?" Sophie stepped forward, her pre-med training forgotten. This woman had abandoned them when Sophie was 5 years old. She'd grown up without birthday Parties from her mother without bedtime. Stories without anyone to explain what it meant to become a woman. We didn't need you then. Sophie's voice trembled. With 15 years of buried rage. We don't need you now. Noah remained silent. He barely remembered Clara, but he'd lived with the aftermath every day, watching his father work until exhaustion, seeing Ethan step into a father role at 8 years old, comforting Sophie through panic attacks about abandonment. Clara's face crumpled. I made mistakes. Horrible mistakes. But I'm trying to make amends. Amends? Ethan laughed bitterly. You want to make amends? Where were you when Dad worked 3 jobs to keep us fed? When Sophie had nightmares for 2 years? When I had to explain to Noah why other kids had mothers and he didn't? David finally spoke, his voice eerily calm. Clara, did you ever think about what would happen to your children when you left us for another man? The question hung in the cold Dallas air like a death sentence. Clara opened her mouth, then closed it. Behind her, 13-year-old Emily shifted uncomfortably, her eyes wide, with the terrible understanding that she was witnessing her mother's reckoning. The silence stretched between them like 15 years of pain made manifest. David stepped back into his house, leaving Clara standing on the threshold between forgiveness and consequence. He returned with an envelope, thick, white, final. There's $800 in here, enough for a motel room for 2 weeks, food, bus tickets to wherever you want to go. His voice carried no anger now, just cold finality. But Clara, understand this. You made your choice 15 years ago. This door closed the day you walked out on your children for a richer man. Clara's face went white. David, please. I know I hurt you, but hurt me. David's composure cracked for the first time. You think this is about me? Look at them, Clara. Really? Look at them. He gestured toward his children. Ethan, who'd given up his childhood to help raise Noah. Sophie, who still had panic attacks about people leaving. Noah, who'd never known what it felt like to have a mother's love. These 3 kids built themselves from nothing because their mother chose money over family. They succeeded not because of you, but in spite of you. Emily pressed closer to Clara, sensing the verdict about to fall. You don't get to eat your cake and have it too, Clara. You can't abandon your family and then expect to come home when your new life falls apart. Clara's tears came then. 15 years of suppressed guilt, shame, and desperate loneliness pouring out on David's doorstep. Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? The same thing I did when you left. David's voice was steady as granite. Figure it out. Alone. He placed the envelope in her trembling hands and stepped back inside his home. The home he'd built without her. The family he'd held together through sheer determination. But David, Clara's voice broke completely. Goodbye, Clara. The door closed with quiet finality. David turned to his children, his real family, forged in fire and sealed with sacrifice. They stood together in their beautiful house, surrounded by 15 years of love, hard work, and unwavering loyalty. Family isn't about blood, David said, softly, pulling his children close. It's about who shows up, who stays, who fights for you when the world falls apart. Through the window they watched Clara walk away into the Dallas night. Emily's small hand in hers, carrying nothing but $800 and the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. Some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt. Some abandonment cuts too deep for forgiveness. And sometimes the greatest act of love is closing the door on someone who taught you the difference between family and strangers who happen to share your blood. David Miller had learned that lesson 15 years ago. Tonight he taught it to the woman who thought love could be abandoned and reclaimed at will. Justice isn't always cruel. Sometimes it's simply closing a door that should never have been opened again. If you are in David's shoe, what would you do? Will you give her a second chance?